Welcome to the Forward Marketing Podcast, the podcast that covers internet marketing strategies and leadership tactics to move your business forward. With your host, Joshua Jarvis. Hey, and welcome back to the Forward Marketing Podcast. That's the number 4, RD Marketing. And I think I've been talking about the last few episodes, kind of talking about where the direction of the podcast should go, and just really enthused by the feedback that I've gotten from the emails that you guys have sent me. I got a great one from, I think it's Dan, who draws cartoons, and they were pretty amazing. And kind of found it odd that I got so many emails around Google Tag Manager of all things. And so very happy that you guys enjoyed that. And want to get started. Again, I'm your host, Joshua Jarvis of the Forward Marketing Podcast, and really wanted to go back to one of my favorite topics, but also kind of the heart of the show and the heart of why I do this. And so Forward Marketing, the reason why we came up with the name Forward is exactly the reason why it sounds like Forward, F-O-R-W-A-R-D. And that was already taken. So we thought first, second, third, forward. And the whole reason is that I love helping businesses move forward. I love growth as a general rule. I'm always teaching myself new things. I'm always interested in learning more. It's just something that is sort of part of who I am. And so wanted to really create something. I wanted to create a company that could help businesses move forward, so I could do that for them. And generally speaking, businesses move forward when profits are moving up. And that was sort of where the business idea came from. But then also the podcast, I wanted it to be something where I could help businesses. And so I'm going somewhere with this, and that is my desire was really to help those small businesses. And whether that's a solopreneur, one person, or whether that's someone who is, got 50 employees, really wanted to help them. When you get too large, then it's kind of hard to do some of these things because, even if, you can hire people to sort of do what I'm talking about versus hiring a company. And maybe that's a really good episode one day, is to talk about, like, you don't have to hire someone. You hire someone, you're paying them, let's say you're paying them $50,000 a year. You got their insurance and some headaches, versus hiring a company and you're paying them far less to do the same thing, but of course they don't have the same buy-in, and that's one of the reasons why you want to have a great mission statement and a great lens and clarity. And one of the books we're reading at work is one of my favorite in the last 2 years. It's called Story Brand, and one of the comments from the author is when you confuse, you lose. And I think mission statements really give you some clarity around not just your business, but also your website, as well as your digital marketing strategy. And that's really what we're talking about today, is your mission statement and how it plays a role in your digital marketing strategy as it starts. So let's start with a mission statement. So if you do not have a mission statement and you're in business right now, it's one of those things. I think people create a statement and, almost like it's cliche at the moment, right? You create a mission statement, you put it on the wall, and then no one remembers it, no one thinks about it. And that's really not what I'm talking about. I'm actually talking about your mission. Like, why did you create your business to begin with? What is it that propelled you into business? And frankly, when I got into real estate 16 years ago, it was because the money was there. I didn't do it for any other reason. But that reason, money to help my family, was one that quickly became, something that just did not fulfill me. And frankly, although I provided a service to the clients, it was sort of the basis level. They call it transactional. And Gary Keller, the guy that runs Keller Williams, or a guy that owns Keller Williams, I should say, he has this sort of transactional versus fiduciary. And a fiduciary person is someone that puts their own interest, puts your interest, the customer's interest, above their own. And that's really what. But I was in transactional at that point. And so a mission statement is one of those ones you can go back to and say, well, so why do you exist? What problems do you solve as a business? And I love the book called Start With Why, because it's one of those ones that helps you come up with a mission statement or a why statement, or sort of why do you exist statement. And one of his comments in the book is to start with some I believe statements. And so when I had my real estate team, and I ran it like a business. So I know some of you who are, running, maybe you're an insurance agent, or you're running a small business, with a brick and mortar store, and it doesn't necessarily make as much sense. You're like, oh, he's a real estate agent. You want to tune out. I ran it just like a business. I didn't do a lot of the things that I was full time. I had employees, had contract employees as well. And so this is where the feedback is coming from as far as real estate goes. So don't just tune out because it's just real estate. I know, but I have a lot of listeners that are real estate too as well. So anyway, we took our team through this and this book, Start With Why, and came up with some I believe statements. And some of those belief statements we came up with, again, in the context of real estate, you got to come up with your own, was that I believe home ownership is a great investment. I believe that home ownership is great for families. And I got pushed back from my team. So why is it great for families? Because it provides stability as well as that financial investment part. I was really, a lot of mine was around families. Now, a family is just a unit of people. So this is not a political podcast. And I felt like when I said the word families that my team keyed in on the potential political word family and wanted to know some of that. And I'll be honest, I'm completely biased. I came from a single parent home. And so a lot of my lens of life has around wanting stability for families. I see that as a problem around America. And so stability and families and those sort of things really resonate with me. And so a lot of my I believe statements, especially around the word real estate, came from, how does real estate support a family? They're part of a community. There's a whole bunch of reasons why versus renting. And so not to go into too depth, renting versus buying, but when I was in real estate, the thought of renting versus buying, there was one really good advantage of renting, and that was mobility. And to me, that was one of the enemies of stability for families. So a family likes to rent, they don't want to buy. There was a real popular guy who wrote a book and was like, oh, you should rent everything, and it's great. Yeah, you can be mobile and you can be sort of agile if you want, but it doesn't give your family roots in an area, and it doesn't, don't have a sense of community. And I just felt like those things were important. So I'll say all that to say is that basically it created a lens for us. So our mission statement became moving families forward. You can see I didn't fall too far off from that when I created my company, Forward. But that created a lens. And you say, well, okay, what does that have to do, that story and all that, what does that have to do with my marketing campaign and all of that? So it has a lot to do with it, actually. At least I think so. When you look at your website, for instance, who is your audience? So immediately for me, in this case, my audience was families. Yes, I absolutely love helping first-time home buyers that were singles. I loved helping people who weren't sort of your traditional families. But to me, it was anyone. It wasn't necessarily anyone, but it was basically, two or more of individuals sort of buying a house. And I loved sort of that whole process, especially the dynamics of the different personalities and all that. So that part was sort of interesting. And so because families was such a big deal, and my website, and of course, if you went to my website, you probably wouldn't see this, but the dream was there. And I think that's the case with a lot of the things, is that we have, the best laid plans, don't always go the way we want. and also a little bit of the cobbler's shoe mentality where, you go to, like if you call a house cleaner to come clean your house, she does an amazing job. You go to her house and it's a complete wreck, So a lot of my digital marketing stuff, you go to Forward Marketing, you go, hey, he's not doing anything he said he was going to, he's doing on the podcast. Yeah, that's pretty much true because I spent all my time doing it for clients. But anyway, so my audience was families. And so how does that change what I do? Well, if my audience is families and they're moving, they can only be moving like towards a house or towards another house. And so you can have your clear call to action be towards moving your family forward. Hey, get your family on the road. So I'm actually calling them out. And I think also so if your target was construction workers, for instance, maybe you have a construction supply company, then you would be talking about how, get the products you need for your job site. You'd be using their vocabulary, you'd be talking to them. And so it's really important when you go all the way back to your mission statement is that one of the things it needs to identify is your target audience. You need to know who the person is that you are serving. I mean, it could be, you can get really detailed and get, these personnel sort of profiles, if you will. But ultimately, you've got to decide who it is that you want to target. And I remember this exercise from a networking thing, and people would stand up and they say, oh, I need a referral. And so it's a good referral for you. And they'd say, well, anyone that wants to buy or sell a car. Well, that doesn't really help because anyone, at least they've narrowed it down to buy or sell a car, but anyone means no one. So you need to be clear. You need to get it down. I think we did an episode on niches and how to find these niches, but you've really got to get it down, and that's going to be really important for clarifying your website's message and everything else. The other thing that a mission statement can do is it can really help you with your blog content. Now, there's a bunch of different ways to create blog content, and that's another episode for another day. But having this mission statement can really, really help. So, for instance, going back to my example, moving families forward was my mission statement, and then I had all those belief statements about families. So my blog content could be family activities, family locations, family stats, things that are important to people who are typically like in a family situation. Now, a lot of this is suburbs, obviously, but school districts, park reviews, things that families typically do versus, say, single people. It could be anything from church locations to, like I said, preschools to location of, say, grocery stores and those sort of things. And those sometimes some of those things are important to everyone, but certainly sort of the families that are starting out and are planning on growing their family are definitely interested in those sort of things. So that could be your blog content. And just a reminder, so your blog content isn't they did a study, and I think it's something like 95% of the visitors that visit your blog content don't turn into actual customers. And I know that's really counterintuitive. It doesn't work. That statistic doesn't work in every industry, but the number is actually lower than what you might think. I think a lot of people, like myself, have been promoting the fact that blog content gets people, they get familiar with you and then they use you. And that may be true in the service industry, because I'm about to say I know I'm an outlier in that case. With when I was in real estate, a lot of my blog content created leads. But in general, the blog content helps build your site sort of authority so that the service pages rank. And so when you put it through the lens of your mission statement, that all of those things need to gel. So your blog content can't just be like, if your target was, say, office managers, because I don't know, maybe you've got some specific services that you want to sell to sort of businesses in the commercial space, and you know that office managers are the ones that do the purchasing. So you would, so your content would be surrounded by, it would be targeting those office managers, even though you might be selling something like water. You might do 10 party ideas for office managers, the best, you have to get inside the mind of an office manager. Just like in real estate, website. Like I mentioned, the families as an example. And you can keep doing this. But your mission statement should create a lens through which you're able to judge everything. And so, or if you put it in the case of StoryBrand, and you go through that book, it's a real short book, highly recommended. And you sort of find they call it the character. I'd say it's the customer, who your audience is. It's the character in the story, and they have a problem and you solve it. I think when you get really, really clear on who that person is, how you solve their problem, that all these other things can kind of come into play. And then having sort of useless menu items on your website doesn't help anything. Having really generic things because you listened to my podcast and you heard all the SEO stuff and you thought, I need to target all these really high volume keywords because Josh, I listened to that one podcast and Josh said it was a great idea to do it. And no, it is completely valid and actually a killer strategy to go after low volume keywords that you can completely own because you're passionate about the subject. In fact, that's actually my advice to a lot of business owners. So anyway, I just wanted to talk about the mission statement as a sort of clarifying tool. You can call it your why statement. You can call it your belief, depending on what level you want to go to with this. Or you can go through StoryBrand and really clarify your message that you are, what problem you're solving for a customer or a character in this case. And they're the hero and you're just the guide. And that's part of the book, StoryBrand, again. And one of the reasons why I wanted to cover mission statement right now is what I'm going to do is be returning sort of to the roots of the idea behind the podcast. And so the next few episodes, probably for the foreseeable future, will be around talking to small business owners in particular, the ones that are having to do a lot of the stuff themselves and walking you through that. In fact, I'm toying with the idea of coming up with a course, making it as cost effective as possible. And if you would be interested in it all in some sort of course where I walk you sort of soup to nuts, everything you need to know about digital marketing, creating a website, and we can go into different platforms. And I would just keep adding sort of premium recorded like webinar type content where you see me working with either examples or actual live clients and storing that for you. If you would find that interesting, then email me at joshua@forwardmarketing.com. And that is, so it's Joshua, Joshua, at the number 4, rdmarketing.com. And let me know if you would be interested in something like that. It'll definitely give me some fuel to create that. And like I said, I would want to make it as available as possible to make it, but hosting, all that stuff does cost money, and of course my time is valuable as well as yours is. So in any case, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I really wanted to just talk about, like, so the one aha that you should really, the one takeaway of this podcast, I always like having an action statement, is that if you don't have a mission statement, you need to create one. But then once you have your mission statement, I assume many of you do, pull it out if you haven't looked at it in a while, and sort of think about your mission statement as a sort of a clarifying lens through which you might view your website and your digital marketing strategies through. And we didn't get into the social media stuff, but absolutely, that if you go all the way back to that same example of families and moving families forward, you could see where I could create an Instagram account of pictures of families and they're moving. I could create, video campaigns. I could do a bunch of different campaigns around families. In fact, and I've talked to this with our team, that I really believe that you could take the same lens and even apply it to something as something like even pay-per-click ads, which tend to be very, very transactional. You don't want to mess up those words. They're very copy-driven. But can you imagine, move your family forward or move your family to the city? Those sort of ads would work, and they would attract the kind of people that I wanted to help. And again, this was. I'm using the word family, and like I said, if that offends you in any sort of way, I do apologize. But it shouldn't. I don't really think it should. But anyway, sort of babbling with myself here. So in any case, I really appreciate you listening. Again, I love it. If you were in another country, again, I'd love it if you hit me up at joshua@fordmarketing.com. Send me an email. You can also get me on Twitter at Jarvis Team. So it's just my last name, Jarvis, and the word team, like a basketball team. Would love to talk to you there. And like I said, look forward to the next few weeks where I'm just sort of going through some really basic stuff, but that I think lays a great foundation for small business owners, especially if they have to do a lot of this stuff themselves, or they've got maybe a virtual assistant or an actual assistant doing the work. So anyway, thanks so much for listening, and make it a great day.